Last time we learned about the creation of Outcast and its unfortunate release. But now we answer the question, what did happen to Outcast's sequel? So in 1999, Outcast was released. Sales were low and Outcast's publisher was obviously disappointed. However, Appeal had planned for Outcast to continue on from the first game. The team were quick to pitch their idea for the next game to Infogram, hoping they'd be convinced just to fund the pre-production stage. Well, once again, Infogram said yes, but this time had a few guidelines in hopes to make sure this one made more of an impact. The first one was that Outcast 2 had to be released onto the PlayStation 2, to later release a PC version. However, because Outcast 2 was being made for consoles, Infogram made the decision for the game to be more action-based and less adventure, as quote, "That's what console games are about." This was probably the first red flag in the game's development, as the adventure aspect of Outcast is largely part of the game's popularity. One of the 3 original directors of Appeal, Yves Gollet, was very unhappy with this new direction set in place. So in 1999, work began and the sequel was given a title. Outcast, The Lost Paradise, a title which would later mean more than the team knew. The story of this game would take Cutter back to Adelpha to once again help the Talon from a higher force. In the last game, Cutter came up against the Fey Talon, controlled by Fey Ran, who we later learned was one of the 2 scientists Cutter was to escort to the parallel world. Well, in this game, Cutter would come up against the World Federal Army. From what I've been able to gather, and without giving too much away, as there may be a hope for this title in the future, stay tuned for that, there are 2 possible versions. When Cutter travelled back through the portal, he erased the actions of Zu, Fey Ran, in Outcast, meaning the probe sent to Adelpha was never damaged, causing the black hole. It's all a bit complicated, but basically Outcast 2 was more of an alternative version of Outcast if the probe was never damaged, and the mission was more of an exploration than a recovery operation. However, when Cutter arrives on Adelpha, all hell breaks loose. His teammates are in need of help as their transport pods have been damaged. Cutter sets off to find help and comes across the Talon we know. However, he later finds out the Talon culture is being suppressed by human soldiers acting under the name of the World Federal Army. In the second story outline of Outcast 2, we follow what happened when Cutter returned to Earth following the story of Outcast. After making it back to Earth safely, Cutter informs heads of the operation about the Talon and Adelpha in general. A plan to travel back to Adelpha was made. When the information of a parallel universe is released to the world with the intent of going back, a collaboration of the world's best are brought together, creating the World Federal Army, with the goal to unite Earth and Adelpha. At this time, Cutter has retired, despite the WFA's invitations to be part of the operation. Soon after the WFA had been on expeditions around Adelpha, led by Talon leaders, they discover a metal which is almost impossible to penetrate with Earth's weapons. After this discovery, the WFA made a large presence on Adelpha, and surely enough again, the Talon culture had been suppressed. A message from Adelpha reaches Cutter informing him of all that's happened. So out of retirement, we play as Cutter to once again release the Talon from their shackles placed there by the WFA. The 2 stories both pitch the WFA as the main antagonist, yet which story was pursued is unknown. I have a feeling it might have been the one that didn't hurt our heads as much. Now in 1999, the PS2 was a year away from release. It was estimated to be the leading platform in the next generation of game consoles, hence Infogram's decision. The problem was, no one really knew how to create a game for the PlayStation 2, as Appeal was full of PC engineers. Yi suggested they create the game for the Xbox, as its rendering capabilities were far superior to the PlayStation, and the Xbox was also similar to building games on the PC. Everyone at Appeal could see the appeal to moving to the console, but Infogram were biased on their choice of platform. The dev kits arrived and the process of creating the sequel to Outcast began. However, it wasn't too long before problems arose. The team kept hitting many problems, including issues with stability and performance of the game. One of the key things Yves had foreseen. With the way the game was heading, Yves left Appeal. The loss of one of the key members of Appeal took its toll on the production, as the game design aspect was now lacking. Yet, creating The Lost Paradise continued, as the game was signed into production with a far higher budget than Outcast, dwarfing the first game's budget almost 5 times over. However, due to Infogram's place in the market, which wasn't too great at the time, the 7 million was brought down to 5, still a large improvement on the game's predecessor. With the budget in place, Appeal went ahead and made quite a lot of progress into creating the Lost Paradise. Character models were made, Cutter was then remade, new animals were added, and old ones were now rideable. There's not much information about certain characters, but one I found rather striking in resemblance to another science fiction game. Following the path of Outcast's expansive regions, Appeal had pushed the boundaries of Outcast locations like Shamazar and made huge landscapes. There was Ganzar, a massive green island region which included several villages above and underground, a temple located on the island's frozen mountain, and an on-land World Federal Army base. Ganzar was also home to a Gorgor or two. Another region was Sar, which could be seen as the sister region to Talazar. Located atop what looks like desert spires was a network of bridges and ladders to get to numerous buildings across the city. How the Talan found themselves up there is a mystery on its own. And lastly is a location mentioned in Outcast.
How come I've not seen any children around?
They are all safely guarded by the female Talan in Kizar, an island very far from the region of Okazanka.
Kizar is the home to female Talan and their children, which by the looks of it is located in a cave. The sheer amount of buildings in the city really gives us an idea of the scale of the game. Exactly how much bigger the game was planned to be, well, only the developers know. But with so much more land to cover, the transportation was going to have to be faster than Cutter's Twon-ha. Vehicles were to play a large role in the Lost Paradise. Covering land, air and sea, the list of vehicles were a buggy for land transport, a boat for sea, and the Ventilope, also known as...
And you dumb lizard.
...for the air. And this massive WFA ship for air and sea? Not quite sure, but it's got a built-in cinema. On the topic of the World Federal Army vehicles, they have access to a very snazzy looking dropship which can be seen in action. The wildlife in Outcast was always rather eye-catching, from Twon-has to Z-dogs, Gamors to Senecta. The Lost Paradise was to be no different. From the released footage we can see two new hostile animals added to the game. A large saber-toothed tiger-esque animal, another large snake-like creature which could be related to Z-dogs but found in a dry terrain. Although looking at some of the artwork, we may have bumped into this guy in more than just one region. Not only was the world of Adelpha becoming more and more impressive, but the team were really looking at ways to push the capabilities of the PlayStation 2. From dynamic lighting to even better looking snow. The demo was also able to run at 60 frames per second, which even today is a sought out feature many gamers demand. The demo was looking promising. The world they were creating seemed to be coming along nicely. However, there were problems inside the team itself. After Yeez had left, there was a big hole to fill in the game design department. They went ahead and hired his replacement, who seemed to be on the same page as everyone else. However, midway into production they realised the designer was heading the department in the opposite direction. On this realisation, development was on halt as they had to rethink the whole design from the start. It's no secret that from the beginning of production, Outcast The Lost Paradise had problems, with each one banging a new nail into the now inevitable coffin waiting for the game. In 2001, a seemingly larger nail came crashing in as Infogrames stocks hit a new low, causing the company to kill all third production projects, in hopes to save their in-house game studio, Eden Games. You can thank them for V-Rally 3 and Need for Speed Porsches Unleashed. Sadly, Outcast The Lost Paradise was in the category of third-party games. After spending 2 years and €3 million, Outcast The Lost Paradise was cancelled. In an attempt to keep Appeal alive, Infogrames traded whatever stocks Appeal had left in Infogrames with a new pre-production contract for a Tintin game. Without much choice, Appeal began creating the new Tintin game using as many assets from The Lost Paradise as they could, just to speed up production. The game prototype was complete and sent to Mulusar, who holds the rights to Tintin. However, for reasons unknown, they didn't sign off on the game. With that final nail hitting the coffin, in 2002, Appeal hit bankruptcy, and the studio was closed. Any hopes to a sequel of Outcast was gone. Throughout production, Infogram weren't the only ones following the progress of The Lost Paradise. Logging in every night, sitting through the dial-up tone were hundreds of eager fans awaiting any updates on the sequel's progress. These fans are the same ones who after all these years still hope to see Outcast come to blossom once again, whether it be an updated re-release or the lost sequel we never had. However, for a group of fans, the second coming of Outcast was too far away. The idea of never setting a foot on Adelpha again didn't sit right. So, find out next time what happened when this group got together to create their own version of the sequel to Outcast.